Decor. Thanks, Ruthie. We are honored this week also. This is such a wonderful book, such a wonderful endeavor. We are so happy to have Cathy here sharing chapters from Tom Riley's book, More Light. I've just been working a little bit with Cathy. I'm kind of a newbie to the Riley endeavors. It's been just lovely. The artwork is beautiful. And you'll hear share reading from the chapters today. So I'll show you the cover. Here we are. That's Tom and Baba there. Tom meeting Baba. Was that right, Cathy? Maybe you could say what?
That's what I imagine Tom was, envisioning when he painted that painting.
Beautiful.
Because if you'd like, I can read what he wrote about the painting.
Yeah.
Very beautiful. So Tom says about this painting, the essence of our being is fulfilled through meeting him in a sacred place. This comes through longing. Here, I imagine being with Baba once again, gifted by his sacredness. Once again with him, gifted by his light and love.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you, Cathy. And now maybe you can take it away.
Oh, yes. So thank you, friends, for coming to join me in celebrating Tom's upcoming book with this presentation today. And last week we began, or week before last, we began our celebration with sharing chapters 1 and 2. Today we're going to concentrate on 3 and 4, chapters 3 and 4, Tom's remembrance of meeting with the early New York group, Fred and Ella, and all the Shaws and all the connections there. And chapter 4, we'll also share about chapter 4, which is the 1958 Sahavas in Myrtle Beach. So we are going to have a video that Tom and I did with Greg Butler, actually just 2 and 3 months before Tom passed, talking about the images in the book. So there'll be a little video of that to share. And then friend Josh McGill is going to do a reading from chapter 3. I'm going to share from chapter 4. And we'll end with some movie snippets from a past talk at the Maher Center in 2008. And this is going to last about an hour today, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Oh yes, the book is available mid-December through myself or Sherry R. And that's very exciting. And on we go. So here's our first share, which is this video that Greg Butler did of Tom and myself. while at the new school in New York, one of your favorite professors was Dr.
I was taking a study in Indian philosophy from an individual who was born in India. He was from a Hindu background. And he taught very objectively the history of religious involvement in India.
No.
No.
His name was Dr. Sabod Chandra.
Sabod Chandra Roy, R-O-Y.
And he and Tom became
Very
good
agreeable
friends.
and very friendly. Yeah, he was quite amazing because he was very seriously recommended not only in India but in Europe and America.
So the wonderful connection that happened between Tom and Dr. Roy was that one day Tom went to Weiser's bookstore down in the village, and what did he see on a post but a big poster saying, "Just off the press"?
God speaks.
So that was 2 years later, Tom sees Baba's name again and sees his photo. You went to Weiser's and there was Baba's face, and just off the press, God speaks. So of course you bought the book.
Read the book.
And then
Was overwhelmed by its essence, which was so informative and fulfilling for me.
what you did was so interesting. The connection that happened was that you told Dr. Roy.
Yes, and he acquired the book somehow, and he was overwhelmed by the essences within the book.
He was blind, so he had somebody read him God Speaks.
I'd forgotten.
And then when he finished it, he told you that the very night that the reader finished God Speaks, he had gone to a social gathering. Somewhere in Manhattan, he went to a social gathering, and who did he meet but Phyllis Frederick
And Adele.
and Adele Walken. And
They impressed him very seriously.
so he was thrilled. He had so inspired by God Speaks, and here were two of Meher Baba's close disciples.
Yeah, they were extremely well informed and highly intelligent.
Because this was the spring of '56, you got God Speaks. So you were given the phone numbers. Dr. Roy got the phone numbers for you of Adele and Phyllis.
I right away met them.
Then you called.
Yeah, connected with them.
And they told you.
About the Winterfelds.
Yes. And so.
Marvelous husband and wife from Germany, and extremely well informed about the history of Indian philosophy and the study of Meher Baba's life.
That's right, because they had been Buddhists, before they discovered Meher Baba. So tell about your going up to meet Fred and Ella. Well, you did have a wonderful first meeting, and then you began attending, and that was
wonderful, wonderful variety of younger Americans.
And
some of them a bit older.
Mm-hmm. I think you were among the younger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Fred and Ella suggested that you write to Meher Baba. So we've included the first communication that you sent to
Meher Baba, which is so beautifully written and was sent.
You want to read it?
Yes, would you read it, Tom?
Okay.
It's so beautiful.
Who did I write it to? I mean, but I sent it to. I didn't know where he was living.
I think Fred and Ella gave you this address. Sri Meher Baba, Grafton Road, Satara, India.
Oh, I see. Was he there now?
He was there at that time.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it would be wonderful.
Dear Meher Baba, I would have loved Jesus during his last hour in the garden. I love you now. Your servant who wants only to see you, Thomas Riley.
An amazing uncoincidence connected to this letter was that when we received this from the archives in India, you don't have a copy of this, that looking at the postmark from New York City, it says November 29th, 1956, which was just a few days before Baba's second accident outside of Satara. You were sending this just a few days before Baba's accident. So knowing that, would you mind reading that letter again? It means so much knowing that.
Dear Meher Baba, as I would have loved Jesus during his last hour in the garden, I love you now, your servant who wants only to see you, Thomas Riley.
You also connected with Darwin and Jean Shaw.
There was a husband and wife who were very, very seriously involved with Meher Baba and had formed gatherings to learn more about him. Here is a photograph of myself painting in my apartment in Greenwich Village in New York City.
So you would be about what?
Sitting at my easel and painting on a panel.
How old would you have been?
Probably, 23?
That was actually the year you saw Baba's photo, when you were 23.
Not long after that, I married. My wife's name was Yvonne Andro. We married and had a little female child, which we named Christina. And this is Fred Winterfeld from Germany at his and his wife's home in Manhattan. They had Monday evening meetings completely dedicated to Meher Baba.
So that really encapsulates that time of your connection with the early New York group before meeting Baba in 1958.
Quite a few people involved in Meher Baba. Younger people, older people.
Mm-hmm. So that's chapter 3. In 1957, Baba began talking about coming to the West, informing his devotees, and then in 58 it became clarified that he was coming in mid-May to 1958.
To Meher Center.
Right.
And this photograph was taken within a building which was within or upon the Meher Center. And this was simply known as the barn.
Mhm.
It was a building which had been built upon this land, which now became and ultimately would become a very important Baba center on the east coast of America. And it was here that Baba would arrive and reveal himself to so many people who came there in 1958.
And every morning you all gathered in the
We
barn.
gathered around him within the barn every morning, and the rest of the program continued for the rest of the day. And here is Meher Baba in another building on the center known as the Lagoon Cabin.
So every afternoon, Baba would station himself in the lagoon cabin.
And see specific individuals.
The first full afternoon of the 58 Sahabas, you and Yvonne were called in to meet Meher Baba as a couple. And it was interesting to me that when John Bass introduced you to Baba as artists from New York, this is what Baba said.
Yoga for the East is a means toward the fulfillment of the spiritual life, just as art in the West is a process toward the realization of the sacred within. So that was quite a revelation. This is the meaning and process of art. And this is a wonderful photograph of the wooded landscape within the heart of the center with some of the buildings that were constructed there.
And in 58, there were low pine border fences around the inner part of the center. People would sit on these
Log forms
and talk and
on
wait.
either side of the roads within the natural earthen roads within the center were bordered on either side by large, round, and long pine logs. Here's Meher Baba with two of his Mandalaya disciples. That is
Adi.
Adi Irani,
Mm-hmm.
one of his close disciples. And on his left side, another named Erich Desawala.
This photo is such a nice one for me to have seen because, Tom, you're in this photo.
Mm-hmm.
And you see on the left side of the photo, there's Dee Dee Eaton and Larry Carish, and then behind young Larry is Tom. And Baba, either just having been set down by the dancers or maybe about to be carried. And we included this photo and this next one, in which Baba would sometimes use canes because you were so aware that Baba had
a serious accident not long before leaving India to come to America. He had this accident in India.
and so used the cane sometimes and was carried by the dancers. And I think it was very touching that you were so aware that Baba was physically suffering, but he would not ever belie this suffering, but would always bear a cheerful countenance.
Yeah, he would never reflect it.
The next two photos are wonderful images of Baba's inviting the men to join him behind Baba's house when he was so playfully throwing the candy prasad.
Ready to throw this, what was known as prasad, to an individual to his right. And a moment later, when the throwing was fulfilled, he would throw it off to the left before him. And it would be grasped by another individual who had not expected such a gift.
So exactly what happened to you.
Yeah, it did happen to me. Yeah,
Your hand was just
awaiting.
waiting up in the air.
It suddenly manifested in my hand. What was it?
A little candy.
Oh, yeah. There it was.
Mhm. And I remember you've often said you felt Baba was saying,
Be prepared for the unexpected. Yeah.
and I remember behind the caretaker's cabin, Baba was situated with all of the 58 Sahaba Cs, and Harold Rudd had asked Baba, could he play a tape of the life of the Buddha? And this was interesting to us because there you are, leaning against the side of the caretaker's cabin, as Baba was intensely listening to this tape. Very soon before leaving, during that 2 weeks, I think the day before leaving, Baba invited you all to go to the beach.
Some are men, some women.
Mm-hmm. And when you got, before you went to the beach, Baba had said he wanted you all to accompany him because he wanted everybody to find a shell.
Oh, for his female mandali, or disciple, named Mara. So we went down to the beach itself, accompanied by Baba, and began the search. And I found what I thought was a perfect shell. And it was not extremely large, but moderate in size, but filled with tiny little holes that were golden surfaced holes. I was deeply impressed with that shell and thought she would love this one. Made sure it was quite clean, sand removed entirely, and brought it over to Baba. He studied it in a very focused way. Then, and he returned it to me.
And then
Touched his heart and his forehead with it, and handed the shell back to me. And this was rather disappointing to me.
because you thought he wasn't going to give it to Mara. And then you became deeply moved as you walked back into the center because you realized Baba had given this to you as a gift.
Yeah.
Which you now have for always.
Yeah.
You have that beautiful shell.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like it really, one thing I just loved about that story that you have shared before is that Baba was standing completely alone in the dunes.
Well, people were nearby searching
Mm-hmm.
the sand.
But it just, in my mind, I see you and Baba standing alone on the next to each other on in the dunes, and Baba taking the shell,
pressing it
to his head and his heart,
and his head,
and then
directly returning it to me.
mm-hmm. I was also so moved by your talking about going with him, I think the next day, to Wilmington, and as the plane left and taxied and took off into the skies,
What?
all you below, you were just going with him. Your hearts went with him.
Such a very, very important occasion.
Mm.
His departure. He was so fully aware of that
Mm.
as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
And cast his love upon us as he departed.
That's right. You said he was waving and
full of that departuring love.
so that's 1958.
Wow. So wonderful can people hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Wonderful,
you.
wonderful to see that again. I just realized I never get tired of these stories. Thank you for sharing that video with me. We'd love to continue with Josh McGill sharing a reading and some thoughts with us. Josh, are you, there you are in the
Hi,
picture.
Jay Baba, everybody. Thanks, Cathy, for this opportunity to read from Tom's book. I can't wait to read it. So Tom means just so much to me. Upon hearing his stories at Southeast Gathering a few years back, I was totally starstruck. His immense storytelling talent was on full display. He's insightful, rhythmic, humble, hilarious, and true. And as I'm sure everyone here knows and has felt before. But these stories and the telling were actually really unique to me in that they weren't merely a comforting assurance or a spiritual-minded entertainment, but a true, whole, real spiritual experience for me. When Tom was touched by Meher Baba, I was touched by God as well. I felt a spiritual affinity to Tom's internal experience. I'm really just enamored, inspired, and in love with his path. So just so grateful to have met him and so very, very glad to be here now. I'm reading page 76, 77, and 78 in More Light. They invited me to dinner and a social gathering at their home in the following Saturday night. They lived in the upper 80s, near the Metropolitan Museum overlooking Central Park. The people at this occasion were intellectuals, men and women in the academic and artistic fields. The French priest, Father Thibodeau, was also present, a very likable individual, as were all the people there. No one attempted to influence or convert me. I wrote Adi, presenting the entire troublesome series of events concerning the conversion to Catholicism of the Gilmans, the gathering at their home, and the French priest. I had abandoned religious structure, and their focus upon that direction was alienating to me. I longed solely for the revelation of God's presence within myself. In 10 days or so, Adi's response arrived. He wrote that he'd had the chance to read my letter to Meher Baba. Baba wanted me to know that I should absent myself from all religious forms, structures, ceremonies, and religious shows of any kind. They were not for me. What an immediate and wonderful release I experienced. This resonated so strongly within me and initiated an increasingly clear awareness of just what formalized religious structure really amounted to for me personally. Letters to and from Adi continued. Unfortunately, some of these letters have been lost, but in one, Baba made an inquiry about my interest in poetry. He asked me this: in the history of poetry in the Western world, is there a particular poet whose work is outstanding to you? And which of that poet's poems is most memorable to you? I pondered the reason for Baba having asked me such a question. Almost at once, I remembered my sophomore year at Temple University in my English class, taught by a very spiritually conscious professor named Harold Lazarus. It was while I was taking this course that I truly discovered the depth of the English poet, John Donne, and his poem, Batter My Heart, Three-Person God. I had first become acquainted with Donne in high school, but became much more captivated by his consciousness in college. I had committed this poem to memory in my sophomore year at the age of 19. My reply to Baba's poetic inquiry included a copy of this very poem. And this is the letter to Baba, April 8th, 1957. Dear Mr. Irani, your letter reached me on April 4th, resolving much that was on my mind. Thank you for your time in writing it. Since I was a boy of 16, I have loved this poem I am enclosing by John Donne, sensing and believing in the need of every word of it. One night I dreamed I saw Meher Baba standing on a hillside in another country. Other figures were standing near. Nothing could be distinguished but him and the figures. Then only he was visible. He was facing me when I made the sign of the cross before him in the air, and he blessed me with his own words. He held his hands open before me, and kissing them, I experienced the greatest joy. I've always felt destined somehow for a vision of God, and I believe that in knowing Meher Baba exists, the kingdom of God is surely within me. In Baba's intense loneliness, I love him, and in his ever freedom, I praise him. He exists for me, and he loves me. He is the weapon that can countervail the anxiety and despair I feel in this dark country. Yet I am desperate to be in his presence. We are what we are, the spirit afterwards, but first the touch. You are my brother, Mr. Irani. My love for you, Thomas Riley. In a subsequent letter, Baba informed me through Adi of a most astounding coincidence. When Baba had been 19 years of age and a sophomore at Deccan College in Pune, John Donne had been his favorite poet as well, and Batter My Heart had been Baba's favorite poem. He also had committed that very poem to memory. Here is that poem. From the Holy Sonnets, Cycle 14. Batter my heart, three-person God, for you as yet but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend. That I may rise and stand, overthrow me, and bend your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. I, like an usurped town, to another do labor to admit you, but oh, to no end. Reason, your viceroy in me should defend, but is captive, and proved weak or untrue. Yet dearly I love you, and would be loved fain, but am betrothed unto your enemy. Divorce me, untie or break that knot again. Take me to you, imprison me, for I, except you enthrall me, never shall be free. Jai Baba.
Never shall be free unless, oh, do you see that? Oops, can you unmute? Oh, Josh? Mhm. So,
Can you hear me now?
yes, there's
Sorry about that.
the one more line at the end.
I'm going to take it back to take me to you, imprison me, for I, except you enthrall me, never shall be free, nor ever chaste, except you ravish me. Jai Baba.
Thank you. That's wonderful. It really is a treat to hear that. hear your tribute and hear your reading. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for asking me.
So
Jai
that
Baba.
those were sections from the third chapter, which is about the New York group and the early connections before Tom actually met Baba in 1958. And I'd like to continue by reading a passage from chapter 4, 1958, which was always lots of fun when Tom would tell it, because it's filled with lots of accents, and he was particularly good at accents, so I'll do my best. One afternoon, an out of the ordinary event took place close by the lagoon cabin. Audie and I were talking together on the stone terraced area where others were gathered. Kitty Davy, having just come up the steps from the boathouse, was carrying a wicker basket filled with white cotton laundry. She stopped close to me as someone asked her where she was going. She replied that she was taking some of Baba's clothing to be washed. She placed the basket upon a small plastic lawn table as she spoke with those near her. A young Englishman in his early 20s happened to be directly next to the basket at that moment. As Audie and I spoke, I noticed that the Englishman seemed seriously preoccupied with the contents in Kitty's basket. Leaning forward with his face near the clothing, he had an expression of puzzlement. With Kitty almost directly next to him, he asked her quite emphatically, "Excuse me, Kitty, I'm very curious about something." She gave him her attention. He continued, "There is a definite fragrance coming from the clothing in this basket." Kitty at once responded, oh, this is Meher Baba's clothing. I'm taking it to be washed and dried in the laundry room nearby." Quite surprised, the Englishman responded, "Does Meher Baba use perfume?" Upon hearing what was said, everyone at that instant became silent and focused. But right away, Audie called out an annoying response. "What the hell is the matter with you? What is the matter with you, sir? Meher Baba has never ever used perfume of any kind. That is his natural fragrance, his natural aroma." This brings to mind an event so closely related to this occurrence. It happened in 1965 on Meher Baba's birthday. The phone rang at our home in Woodstock. It was Fred Winterfeld in New York City. He said, now let's see, how do I get a German accent? "Tom, I have a telegram here sent by Baba with a greeting for you and Ivan and the Woodstock group. Baba is sending his fondest love to you all at this time." As Fred read the message from Meher Baba, I at once began to smell the most marvelous fragrance of roses. I was overwhelmed with what was happening to me, and I exclaimed to Fred with emotional amazement, Fred, I'm smelling Baba's most wondrous fragrance." Immediately, in his German accent, Fred called out, "Gott in Himmel, Ella, Moish, come quick to the phone. Tom is smelling Baba." So I just happened to have that telegram. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that pretty well?
We can see it now. Yeah.
Okay, so that came, see the date on the top there? Baba's birthday in 65. Baba sending his love to yes, to all in the Woodstock group. So. So that was the story from chapter 4. And we'd love to end with some snippets from a few of Tom's sharings in 2008 at the Baba Center, some snippets from chapters 3 and 4.
You're not hearing the sound, Ruthie.
But here I was now, and I knocked at the door. No, I rang the bell. And no, first a voice came down. You know, who is there? Who is ringing? And I gave my name, and what is it you wish? I've come to hear more about Meher Baba. Oh, boy, she is coming. Someone is here to hear about Baba, please. Then the thing came, and I went up. And when I got to the apartment, this was like a 4-story brownstone. It was actually an elevator, and I went up. And Ella was very excited and very happy because something had just happened that very day that was astounding. They had a beautiful little Persian cat named Frida. This wonderful cat, somehow they left the fire escape window open, and Frida went out and went down, and Frida was run over by some kind of delivery truck. And Fred was heartbroken. Ella was telling me this. Fred was heartbroken. This was only about 2 or 3 days ago, and Frida and Fred were very close. She was so lovable. And Fred went into the bedroom this morning, and to his great surprise, what did he see walking out of the closet? But Frida, like this, a beautiful Frida was heading, and she looked at Fred and smiled and said, "Don't worry, Papa. Everything is wonderful now. You don't have to worry again," and walked through the wall. And Fred was ecstatic. So I met Fred in his best, absolutely best mood. So I connected myself then with the New York group and met some really wonderful people. I also married. I married in 1957, and I have to tell you that our first child was the most precious, precious little child. You know, there are children everywhere, but this one was unique. And there she is. Mm-hmm. He was speaking in the barn every afternoon, and not speaking, but communicating. And Yvonne and I were the last 2 people to leave the barn. We just stayed there, and everyone else had left except Meher Baba, and I think it was just one Mongoli, because we started walking back. We were about halfway back on one of those long stretches, walking on the ocean side of the drive coming back toward the refectory, when I heard something, and I looked, and a car was coming along. And I could see that Adi Irani was driving the car, and Meher Baba was sitting in the back seat with the window open and his arm out of the car like this, and he was looking
at us and smiling. And as he came by, he held out his hand like this, and I put my hand up like this, and all of a sudden he smacked my hand like this as he went by, and he was so thrilled and so happy, turned back and looked and smiled. Yeah. And there was another occasion that he asked us all to accompany him down to the beach, because one of the things he wanted us to do there was to see if we could find an appropriate, beautiful seashell that he could give these seashells to Mara as a gift from us. So everybody proceeded to look for the seashells, and I found one that just happened to fascinate me. It was full of holes and gnarled looking in such a way that it was almost like an art form. But I could see that later that that Mara may not have, thought, oh, this is the one I want. No, it had a little bit of the grotesque in it. So I brought it to Baba, and he took it and looked at it and approved of it like this. But I think he touched it on his head like this and then gave it back to me as a kind of prasad, which I still have it. And that was such a gift. But this was the last day of Baba's being here on the center, and we were all gathered together in the afternoon, in the morning at the barn. And Baba said that he wanted Harry Canmore. Dr. Harry Canmore was a chiropractor from New York. And Harry had a very commanding and a profound manner of reciting the Master's Prayer. And Baba said, Harry will recite the Master's Prayer. Everyone will stand, including Meher Baba. And as soon as Harry has completed the prayer, half the people here will, in an orderly way, go out through those French doors, the main entrance into the barn. And then when those people have left, the next half will, in an orderly way, make their way out, like this. So Harry, should I talk like Harry? Harry stood up, Baba stood up, and everyone else. And Harry began to recite the Master's Prayer. O Parvatigar, the preserver and protector of all. And this went on in this kind of tonality. And all the time this was going on, Baba was standing there, and I want to tell you, there wasn't one part of his body that wasn't in motion. And at the same time that this motion was going on, his eyes were 100 places at once, looking at all of these 350 people. His eyes were everywhere. And then as soon as that, and I felt something so profound coming up out of my heart that I could barely breathe. I thought, something's going to happen to me. That's how powerful the experience of that love was. So when that ended, Baba sat down, and in an orderly way, the first group made its way out. I was in the second group, and I was eager to get out so that I could find an appropriate place where I could be right next to the path as Baba passed by. So I was eager to get out, but all of a sudden, here I found myself directly right in front of Mayor Baba as he was sitting in the chair like this, and I was right in front of him, and it was startling to me. And he was looking with a very serious and piercing look right into my eyes like this. It was overwhelming, staggering to me like this. And after a certain point, I thought, I can't stand it. He went like this. Well, now it's my turn to get up and go. And when he did this, I quickly got around him and headed out toward the door. And as I reached the door and looked back, there was another individual right in front of him. And he was doing the same thing to that person. And the person was like... But I did get to find a great spot. And then the last time, we all accompanied him to the Wilmington airport, and that was his farewell. And that's the last time I saw him until 1962.
That's so. So those are some wonderful snippets from a talk in this at the center's meeting place in 2008, and we wanted to thank the Mayher Center for giving permission to share those talks with us this afternoon. So before adjourning, whatever you say, I just wanted to remember one little remembrance from Tom's talk about walking back with Yvonne from the barn and Baba slapping his hand. And a friend, upon hearing this story, said, I think you should call that story The Highest of the High Five. So Tom added that little phrase into the book. Anyway, it's wonderful to share the highest of the high with all of you through Tom's eyes today. Thank you, Betty and Ruthie and Josh, for sharing. And we're so happy that the book looks like it will be born in mid-December, so that's exciting. Betty or Ruth, would you like to say anything before we skedaddle?
Just wanted to maybe give your email so that if people want to order the book, they'll know where to send.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, I'm actually, I've created a new email. Should I speak it, or how do we do this?
Maybe type it.
Type it on
Pop it in
the
the chat.
chat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Oh, that's a good idea. So am I here? I guess I must be on the chat. Yeah, so I'll put that in the chat. Thank you for suggesting that. And where am I? Okay. Oh, God, I don't know where.
And the cost.
Oh yeah, so the book is a paperback, and it's $30, and it's available through me and of course through Sherry-R. You know, it's funny, I don't see, is my name here? I don't see my name on the. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
Tina. Why is it? I don't see it. Oh dear.
Scroll
Okay.
up to the top, Kath.
Yeah, I can't. Okay, so why somehow it doesn't come through. So shall I just what should I do? I could.
Is it something you can I type it in?
Yes, okay. So Cathy at lifeo'reillybooks.com.
Is that all one word? Life O'Reilly Books?
Yes, LIFEORILEY books.com.
All righty. All right. Oh, this has been so sweet. It's just been wonderful to visit with Tom for a while. It'll be, yeah.
Retreat. Thank you, Josh, for reading. That was
And
fun.
we do have a date for next Saturday.
Yes, Saturday at 2:30 again for chapters 5 and 6.
Wonderful.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Kathy.
Okay,
Thank
Jay.
you.
Thanks,
Thanks, Jay
Kathy.
Baba. Thank you,
Mwah.
everybody.
Love.
Be
Baba.
safe.
Jay
How
Baba.
about-
Beautiful.
Jai Baba.
Shall we say, have a moment of silence before we go? Thank you, Baba. Avatar Mayor Baba Ki Jai.
Hey.
Baba Ki Jai. Jai Baba.
Jai
Mwah.